Hello, hello, everyone! Welcome back to Lucyfer's Lair! We are here today with our very first ever guest, Zen! Hello, Zen!
Hello!
Hello! And
Happy to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad to have you here. This is going to be so wonderful. Let me make sure I got all these volumes and things figured out. It's going to be so great. So yeah, we have Zen on today, who we met through a mutual friend. Maddie, shout out to Maddie, wherever you are out there.
Shout out Maddie.
Yes. So I met Maddie through like the punk scene. How did you meet her?
Yeah, so we actually went to elementary school together.
Oh, cute!
So, yes. So she moved states, and we met in elementary school, and we were both kind of the weirdos. So the weirdos, attract.
Exactly.
We've been friends ever since. Yes, we've been friends ever since. Walked home. And then we found out we lived in the same apartment complex. So we walked home together.
Oh shit!
And yeah, she's been my best friend.
I love that. I'm glad she's connected us. So tell us about you while you're here, or do you want me to tell them why you're here? How do what do we want to
do? Up to you. I know that we've kind of coined the term phone booth
medium. Yes, which I love. I love it.
Yeah. I know, it's good. We talked about it before. I'm kind of witchy, a little bit bitchy, a lot witchy, and a phone booth medium. So that's kind of
which we'll go into what that means. It's our own personal definition that we've coined, apparently. And you're also in New Zealand. What time in New Zealand is it for you? Because it's 4 p.m. for me.
Yes, it is 10 a.m., but it's also Thursday.
Yeah, so you're a day ahead.
Wednesday.
Yep, it is.
Yep, so Thursday morning.
Well, I am so stoked to have you here. I'm glad we were able to make it work with our schedules. And I know, for those who are listening, Zen and I, we've already had a long chat about all the stuff we're going to talk about, and we have quite the amount of things to talk about that this is probably going to turn into multiple episodes, just because of all the different categories we want to talk about. A lot about your personal experience with being what we're calling a phone booth medium, which we'll get into that later. Just what are all this stuff? Auras, your family history with being mediums. If I could talk. Because it's not just you, it's your family as well that has this gift that we're calling it.
Yeah.
And then we'll eventually get into magic. We'll talk about different theories, just talking a lot about death, which, spoiler alert, if you didn't know, that's what we talk about here. And then maybe even just jumping a little bit into religion and a little bit into politics, especially with you being in New Zealand, coming from America to New Zealand and seeing that perspective when it comes to religion and politics. I'm just curious about it, though it's not necessarily what this is about. I still think it'd be a fun conversation to have. So tell me about you. Tell me about your gift. Let's explain what is a phone booth medium. Let's start there.
Yes. So the way that I describe my relationship with the afterlife or things that are beyond this sort of veil is a medium has a true medium has a direct contact with those beings on the other side, kind of like a smartphone. They've got that list of contacts, and they can select you out and give you a ring from the beyond, and kind of have that direct connection. I, howeher, see myself as kind of just sitting in a phone booth waiting for the phone to ring. And sometimes the phone rings, sometimes it doesn't, but I have no way to directly connect with, somebody on the other side for sure, 100% of the time. I
You
have no
can't
way to
just
do
tap
that.
into it
I just sort
instantly
of
like we normally see with mediums where they're like, "Oh,
no.
I'm getting a signal. Is it somebody named Steve?" You know?
Exactly, exactly. Most of the time, it's a very strong presence usually. So any sort of like weak connection is I'm not gonna pick up. I have no ability to do that. But
Mhm.
if it's a strong connection, that's the calls I get basically from the beyond. So if you were to come to me and be like, I want to talk to my grandma, that's
Yeah.
passed away, I have no way of getting a hold of her. She'd have to call me first, I
Exactly.
I
Well,
have no way of getting a hold.
and
Yeah.
this kind of happened with us when we first started chatting. We first set up a call just to chat to see if we vibe, to see
Mhm.
what your story is, what you wanted to talk about. And in this phone call, my roommate comes bursting into the room and was like, something's happened. She was crying, and I was like, oh my gosh, like let me call you later. And you were like, of course, yeah,
Mhm.
handle what you gotta handle. I get off the call with you. I go handle what needs to be handled. And basically, what happened was
Mhm.
my roommate's dog passed away in that moment, right when we started our phone call. And
Mhm.
when I got back on the phone with you, you told me before I could even tell you that you went out and like were like, oh, you got off the phone, you got out of your room, you went over to your mom, and your mom looked over at you and said, did someone's dog die? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's
Yeah.
like
Um
that solidified also me just being like, we gotta talk. Like, Jesus Christ, you picked up on that. So that solidified it for me, and that also kind of in a really weird way proved that like what you're talking about isn't bullshit. And your
right.
mom
Yeah.
seems to be more of that medium that can tap into it a little bit better
Yes.
than the way that you do it, and that there is different types of
Mhm.
mediums and how this works and how the thinning of the veil works and what time of year and all that stuff, which we'll get into later too. um
Right. Yeah.
but yeah, that blew my mind when we first started talking. And I'm convinced. So for anybody out there who is skeptical, I had firsthand experience the first time we talked, and hopefully nothing happens when we talk this time, because that would be
Yeah.
tragic. If so,
Oh,
we're
oh
never gonna be
gosh.
friends again. We're stopping talking.
End of it. End of the line.
But
Yeah.
let's talk about how your mother discovered it, how your family kind of discovered this gift, and then into how you discovered your gift.
Yeah, yeah. So, from what we can tell, it kind of originates from my great grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a wonderful opportunity to, kind of after we had our first conversation, to call my grandmother and just talk to her about a little bit more in depth about what my great grandmother experienced and how she was still a product of her time. And so when it came to her ability to do this, she knew that she could do it,
Mm-hmm.
but she never spoke about it. Um, because you are in a small Catholic town.
Oh yeah.
Um, that type of thing, yeah, that type of thing is not going to be accepted. And she had a very strong possibility where if she had spoken about her experiences outside of very close family, um, they would have hauled her off.
Yeah.
They really would have. It's just kind of the fact of the
100%. Well,
matter.
and
They would
what
have taken her away.
what year would
Yeah.
this have been in,
Ooh, okay. So this
roughly?
would have been in the late 40s.
And would it be in the
So
U.S. as well?
she passed away. It would be,
Okay.
yes. So, pardon me. So yeah, so this would have been in the late 40s. And the view on death at this time is very much death is linked with disease. So having a lot of contact with your dead in a physical sense is pretty taboo, and also in a very um, in a very in a spiritual sense, having contact with the dead, to say that you're speaking to them or talking to them is not going to go over well. That is seen as witchcraft, and witchcraft was not seen as a good thing, to put it very, very lightly.
No.
So no. So yeah, so that would have been a very tumultuous time to be telling everybody that you can see things. Now, she was probably the strongest medium out of all of us. And she had very vivid visions. And one thing that I found out through my grandmother is that unfortunately she never got any, what she told my grandmother was that she never got anything good. She always saw when tragedy or death was going to happen, and that was something that she disliked a lot about her gift. My theory is because, pushing it away, they're only going to give you emergency things.
Yes, especially if they're trying to just talk to you.
Exactly. So you're only going to get things in an emergency. And the one event that my grandmother remembers and told me about was when we had her sister, my great grandmother woke up in the middle of the night and started to touch her mouth and was grabbing at her neck and said, you have to call this family member. You have to call them. There's something wrong. You have to call them. And when they tried calling the house, nobody answered, which was very unlike them. So they called the husband and said, where are you? Where is she? Where's this family member? Is she okay?
Yeah.
And he said, oh, I don't know. I'm at work. And they were like, go home. My great grandmother begged him to go home, and he was so weirded out and didn't know why. He went home and they found her. She had an allergic reaction to peanuts that she didn't know was in something.
Oh, shit.
And her mouth had completely swollen up. Her throat was closing up. And once they got her to the hospital, they said that another 10 minutes and she would have been gone. There would have been no saving her.
Oh my God. So that's getting a call even from somebody that's alive.
Yes, yeah. And she said that, it was very jarring to see somebody that you think is alive. You're like, that person is fully alive. And then to have them come to you and be like, I'm dying.
Help me.
Help.
Yeah.
I'm dying.
Oh my God, yes.
So, and after all of this, my great-grandmother would not even acknowledge that the event happened. It was very memorable for my grandmother, who was at the house and heard all of this commotion going on with her sisters, and my great-grandmother would not even acknowledge it. And it was not a thing anymore. It got dealt with and it was fine, so it's not a thing. But my great-grandmother knew. And so my grandmother kind of took that with a grain of salt, and growing up never really had any experiences, never really saw things that were going to happen, and so she thought, it ends here.
Yeah.
And then my mother was born, and my mother's first experience was, now we're talking in the 80s. We're talking the 80s, early 90s is when she had most of her experiences, where it's a little bit more accepted.
Yeah.
Not a lot, but a little. They're probably not going to haul you away.
We do have a bit of a question. So, we have Daniken asking some questions here. Two of them. One of them, to follow up of what you were just saying, I wonder why she wouldn't acknowledge it, which I know we're going to get into a little bit on that, of why your family keeps it a secret. But the other thing that they said is it something like a muscle that you can develop, or is it only waiting until you see if it comes to you?
Yeah. Interesting question. I think a lot of time, one of the biggest questions I get is, can I do what you do? if
Yeah.
I practice.
Yeah.
And while I think that you can absolutely gain more awareness through meditation, mindfulness, and really delving into your spirituality, um, you can absolutely train yourself to be more aware in a personal sense, more
Yeah.
aware of your energy and where you hold things. Um, there is this sort of, when it comes to the connection with the beyond, it's either there or it's not.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot of forms. So some people, for example, Maddie, she can feel it.
Yeah.
She can feel it. She can verbalize it. She can talk about it. She can't see it. She can't see energy. She can't tell you what it looks like. But she can absolutely tell you how it feels. And from a person who does see it, she's right.
Yeah.
She's right. So while you can definitely train parts of it, there are some that are just given, and some that are not. So,
I like
hope
to
that
explain
answers the
it.
question.
I know
I'm
we
sorry.
talked about this last time where I like to explain it where it's kind of like the Force in Star Wars. It's like,
Yes.
it's there, it's around, everything has it. It's just if you choose to train yourself to pull it in. And some people are born just kind of being able to do it. And some people
Yeah.
have to practice to gain the ability. And I think the
Right.
Force from Star Wars is the best way to explain it. And it sounds so
It is.
silly,
It
but it's
really
true. But anyway.
It's true. Yes.
Exactly.
Back to it.
But yeah, back to what were we talking about? It was about your mother and your grandmother, and then your experience with it as well. Go on.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, so we're talking the 80s, and my mom's first experience was she was at a sleepover with a friend. And she thought that her friend kept on like talking to her, was trying to like chat with her, and she was like, I'm trying to go to sleep. Why are you making all this noise? Why are
This is your mother?
And so she was like, stop it. This is my mom. And so she's, I think she would have been 10.
10?
And
oh my
she
God.
looks over at her friend. Yeah. Oh yeah, like quite young. And she looks over, shush, you're being too loud. I'm trying to go to sleep. And her friend doesn't really answer at first, and she's like, oh, whatever. And so she tries to, and it just feels like somebody's whispering in her ear. So she finally sits up and she's like, Crystal, shut up. And her friend looks at her and is like, well, I'm sleeping. What are you talking about?
Leave me alone.
And
the fuck?
my mom's kind of stunned. And then unfortunately she said that she saw somebody like sitting next to Crystal, and her friend, and she kind of looked over at this person who looked like a full person. And my mom was very afraid, didn't know what to do because Crystal's not acknowledging this other human in the room. And so very jarred. And the person is like, hi, I'm Crystal's grandfather. I died in a plane crash. Can you just let them know that, like, I'm okay, I'm all right, I feel like,
oh my
everything's
God,
good over here. Everything's fine. Don't worry about it.
Oh my God.
And my mother was absolutely stunned, and looked at her friend and was like, hey, what happened to your grandpa? And she was like, oh, well, he died like a couple of years ago, but I can't remember how. I wasn't really close. So the next morning, they went downstairs and asked Crystal's mom and said, hey, how did Papa die? And she was like, oh, he died in a plane crash. And after that confirmation, my mom was like, nope, too weird. Too weird. I don't want it. Nope, no. And she basically went home and said out loud, I am not receiving calls. I do not want to hear anything. I do not want to talk to anybody. That was weird, and I don't want to do it again. So for many years, she didn't experience anything. I think sometimes there's this misconception that it's kind of like that they'll come no matter what. That you have no control in your ability to see them, as far as like they'll just come. They'll just keep coming. If you say no thanks, they'll still talk to you, see you. They won't. Most of the time, they won't. If you say no thanks, a lot of people, because you have to understand these were people with consciousness. So if somebody's like, I don't want to talk to you, most people aren't going to keep talking to you.
They at least respect that.
They don't want to, so they're going to leave. Yes, yeah. The dead have a really good relationship with boundaries, so they're not going to try to keep talking to you after that. Yeah, it's great. So it didn't happen, and she only really started getting back into it when I vocalized my ability. And my experience was, ever since I was like a very small child, I've had experiences that my grandmother confirmed, that I would talk about, like shadow people or people who, that I just would talk to. There was a time when I was super small. Now, I remember some of this, but when I was super small, where I would come into my grandmother's room and be like, they're just keeping me up. They're just talking all night, and I can't get any sleep. They're just chatting, and I don't know what to do about that.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you have my grandmother who's trying not to freak me out.
Yeah.
Being like, oh, it's okay.
They're all like, we know, but how do we tell her?
Yes. One of the very first experiences, and this story you haven't heard, so I love this story because I think a lot of the times the ability to do this is like really romanticized, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are TV shows depicting characters who it's very romanticized.
What is it? The Long Island medium? Is that the chick with the big hair? The Long Island medium.
And the nails.
And the nails.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my god.
And the nails.
By the way, Maddie just popped into the chat too.
Hi, man. I love you.
Go on though. Go on.
So my very first experience was not romantic at all. I was on the toilet, and I was in my grandmother's house, and I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I hear this voice go, Xenia, and I was like, yes, and I thought it was my grandma. I was like, yeah, why are you yelling at me? Like, yes. And there was nothing. And I was like, that voice was clear as day. So I get out of the bathroom, and my lovely grandma, she is like half deaf. She cannot hear very well. So I'm yelling down the hallway, and I'm like, grandma, like, what is, and she cannot hear me. So I go into the kitchen, and I was like, and I kind of looked at her, and I was like, yes, can I help you? And she sort of looked at me like I was crazy, and was like, and I remember this because she had a cup of tea in her hands, and she just sort of stared at me because I was looking at her like, what? And so she has this cup of tea in her hands, and she just slowly starts to hand over the tea. Like, she has no idea what's going on, bless her soul. Aww. So confused. Just slowly starts to hand over the tea, and I was like, did you call me? And she was like, no. I was like, oh, weird. Okay, that's fine, I guess. All right. So I just kind of wrote it off as you normally would, because you think you're insane. Mm-hmm. You think you're like something's weird, and after that I kind of started to notice that I could see people as colors, so auras. Yeah. And I wish that it was like a laser light show all the time, but it's not. It's basically just sort of like a mist or a shadow that kind of follows you around. Mm-hmm. And it was then when I started to notice that, oh, these colors, like, people have similarities within their personalities. And whenever I see this color, this is a distinct personality trait that I associate with that person, and people who have those colors. So meanwhile, I'm keeping this to myself pretty much. And then Maddie, actually, I felt comfortable enough to confide in her these these things of like, I see people as colors. And of course, her first instinct was like, oh, what color am I?
Oh,
I
yeah, of course.
what color I am. And
Yeah.
we started to, of course, right? Everyone
Of
wants to.
course.
So I started to talk about it and where it is and how it, how it moves and that sort of thing. And it was wonderful. She totally believed me right off the bat, which is so great. Um, and that's how I started to kind of develop it. And I realized that in the time that I'm in, people are more accepting of that ability of this gift. And I didn't feel like I needed to keep it a secret as much as my great grandmother or my mother. But there is still reasons why I don't typically go like
There's
shouting
definitely
from the
still a
rooftops,
stigma out there about all
my
this stuff.
Yes, and but I realized that I could talk to people like from the beyond the veil, really. Um, when my best friend passed away, and he while he was like a really dear friend, we were best friends, we spent every single day together. He struggled a lot, and he my mom kind of made it a point that he wasn't allowed inside the house unless he's really down on his luck. He had a lot of things going on in his life, and she didn't trust him, unfortunately. That's kind of how it works. But when he passed away, so because of that, my mom never met him face to face, never spoke to him. And once he passed away, I remember, going to my mom, and she's comforting me, and she says, "Oh, he's so lovely. He has the cutest laugh. He had the cutest laugh, and it was just such like a stoner laugh. Oh my gosh, I love his laugh." And of course, I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's great." And then I kind of realized, I'm like, wait a second. How do you know what his laugh sounds like? You've never met him, you've never seen him. And we kind of just stared at each other for a moment.
Is it like that Spider-Man
like,
meme where you're both just like pointing at each other like,
ah! Exactly like that. Of just like, oh my gosh, like you know. And that's when we both started to like talk about it more, and our ability and to what extent. And she told me about my great grandmother and her pushing it away when she was a child and all of her experiences. And I realized that I could probably have more control over this type of gift than I had at that point. Mm-hmm. And my main goal for kind of really delving into it was honestly to just talk to my friend, to be able to chat with him again. And so I really started to lean into it, and I realized that the best way for me to make connections was through palmistry, palm reading, or aura reading. Mm-hmm. And I started to do it with just like close friends, because they're the ones who won't immediately write you off.
Yeah.
And then I realized that as soon as you kind of and this also serves as a warning, but once you sort of open those doors, it's difficult to close those doors again. So as soon as you see them and you can say, "Oh, I see you," they're like, "You can see me?" And
it's one of those like,
that
me?
Is very hard to it's very hard to yeah, exactly. No, literally. But it's very hard after that for you to be like, "No, never mind. Never mind. I can't see you anymore. Never mind."
Yeah.
Like, no, you just said you could see me. Wait a second. So, getting into it, I had more experiences, and I started to read people who I otherwise wouldn't read. And that kind of leads me into the next point of where it sort of became a party trick of
Yeah.
sorts of this yeah, yeah, where, at parties, people would be like, haha, please read my palm, tell me my future. And I never start with the present or future. I always start with the past because you know your past. I don't know your past.
Well, and that's the best way, even when you're doing
be able to make a connection with you.
Like when you're doing tarot readings or anything like that, it's best to start with the past to kind of let the person know, like, hey, I'm legit. If this is inaccurate, then the rest of what I'm going to say probably is going to be inaccurate as well. So if I check this off the list first, you're more likely to at least believe what I'm about to say, or at least understand that this is legit.
Yes, yeah. And that's exactly why I start with it. I always want to make sure that we establish a good connection. You know that I'm not just like bullshitting you. But I also think that people don't realize that most of the time when people read your palm, do tarot, do that side of thing, we're talking about like very spiritual things that are really near and dear to you. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, you are going to have a big house and a cat and a dog and you're going to live happily ever after and everything is hunky-dory.
It's gonna be the harder shit.
I'm gonna be like, you have childhood trauma.
Yeah, oh god.
Yeah, like it's really.
Do you want to unpack this here while there's beer pong next to us right now?
Exactly. And I think a lot of people didn't realize that it was gonna be like that. And if I was in a space with Maddie with me, I love her to death because she would people would be like, read my palm, and she would be like, hey, just to let you know, brief warning before, if you think this is going to be like super funsies, it's probably not going to be that. So just letting you know, that's the thing.
We're about to crack you open like an egg right now, Chad. Are you ready for this?
Yeah. It's a lot. Yeah, it would be a lot more intense than I think people realized. So, yeah, I started doing that, and then I remember my first skeptic, my very first person who had no belief at all, and a lot of times the thing I get from skeptics is that I'm cold reading, or I think what you've said is like Sherlock Holmesing.
Yeah.
Like basically looking at a person for details. Yeah, for details, and then making very educated guesses based upon
just like basic facts that they're doing about their day. Like in Sherlock, the reason I call it Sherlock Holmesing is because if you've watched the TV show, for those who've watched, there's like the parts where he's just like looking at the things, and it's like if there is dog hair at the bottom of their knee or lower, or just hair in general, they might have a cat or a small dog. But if it's above the knee, then they probably have a bigger dog, and you could just be like, oh, you have a big dog in your life, and it'd be like, no shit, there's hair on their legs. Like, you're not being a psychic, you're just stating facts by looking at a person. Like, you're Sherlock Holmesing it right now.
So, exactly, yeah, exactly that. I think that's like one of the big things. And what a lot of people don't realize is that readings start off very broad, and as we go, we start whittling it down into specifics. Now, the time between broadness and specifics isn't a long time. You know, these readings aren't hours and hours, but we do spend like 2 to 3 minutes quite broad because it's more for me than it is for you. I'm listing things. So I'm seeing them and where in your life it's happening. And then I'm going to get there. I promise.
You're looking at the big picture and then you're zooming in slowly. Yeah.
Exactly. So I had a skeptic. It was in high school. I was in the middle of class. and my partner was speaking at the time, was speaking to somebody about my ability, and this guy kind of piped up from the back and he was like, ah, bullshit. And I tried not to get offended because in reality, not a lot of people can do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to be blind to the fact that there are people who do take advantage of people's grief and who cannot do it and who just,
Well, with the amount of
Sherlock
like
Holmes people, there are absolutely.
Yeah, like with the amount of just like people that do it on the internet now, the amount of Ren fairs that happen that have fortune tellers and tarot readers, and then of course people like the Long Island Medium, and then people like Chris fucking Angel, or just like all these people that is just like, all right, we get it. Like, you're fake.
Yes.
Like we see you.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So I do not get offended when somebody's like bullshit, because that's fine. Like I understand where that sentiment comes from. So he pipes up and he's like, bullshit. And I said, okay, yeah, can I read you then? Like, can I read your palm? And he started off very confident. He was like, yep, absolutely, here you go, here's my hand.
Yeah.
It's like, great. So we start getting into it, and I start very broad. And he started saying, that's just general. That's general. That's anybody, that could apply to anybody. And I started to get like a little fed up. And so I looked at his palm and I looked at him and I said, okay, so there are 3 people in your life that you trust, and only those 3 people, because of, and I'm not going to air his dirty laundry, but because of such and such and this and this. And who are those 3 people? Who are those 3 people? Because I'm getting a mother, but I don't know who the other 2 are. And he just sort of stared at me, and I loved it because he stared at me, was silent for about 2 seconds, and he just yanks his hand away. He just like yanks his hand away, and he kind of looks at his hand, like I wrote, like there's notes on there or something, but he kind of just looks at his hand a little bit, and he then kind of looks at me and he's like, okay, yeah, well, it's my mom and my 2 best friends, and that's it. That's all I trust. And we kind of went quiet for a bit, and my partner at the time jokingly kind of said, so do you believe now? Are you a believer? And he kind of looked down, he goes, I don't know, but that shit's crazy. I don't know, but that's weird.
It's crazy, man.
Validation enough for me.
Hey, I mean, I'll take it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. But I think that's a big thing, is that I never want somebody to believe that I am like taking advantage of their grief, or that I'm telling them things that they just want to hear. It's another big reason why I don't monetize what I do, and it's really for close friends, and I don't have a business. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong inherently with people who do monetize their gift. I choose not to, because it gives me more of a reason of like, why would I lie? I have nothing to gain from lying to you.
Yeah, and if you're not tapped into it that day,
special connection.
Yeah.
Exactly. It does. That's another thing, is it does take a toll. It does take a toll, and you have to. A big thing. I think that person said, "Oh, can I train it? Can I gain this ability?" Maybe a little bit, but it's also very important to learn how to disconnect yourself from it, because it's a lot. It's a lot. If I because the same thing that's connecting me with you in readings and that sort of stuff, there has to be a disconnection. And I think that's sort of what like baby mediums or mediums who are just starting out forget, is that when you leave, you're still carrying. If you don't have a type of ritual or anything to kind of cleanse yourself of that, you hold on to it. You're holding on to an enormous amount of other people's baggage, and that's not good for you.
Yeah.
It's just not good for you. It's not good for anyone to do, but especially someone who can feel what they were feeling, who can see
Exactly.
what they were experiencing.
Well, and I know at
You
one
gotta let
point
go.
you were telling
Yeah.
me that it's like it's a voice in your head, but it's not your own thoughts, and it's just constantly there.
Yep.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yes. Yes. So when I do get connections from people who have passed on, it is in my head, and I know that it's very hard to describe, but yeah, it is my voice, but it's
Mhm.
not my thoughts. They haven't originated from me.
Mhm.
I know that some people don't think in words, they think in pictures. So it would be kind of like
I'm that
somebody
person.
just sending you a yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so they think in pictures. So it would kind of be like if somebody just like put a picture in front of your face and was just
Mhm.
like, look at this. Look at this. It's like that where you're like, yep, it's in my head and I see the picture, but I didn't recall that. I wasn't the one who chose that picture. So with me, it's words. It's like I know that it's in my head, but they aren't my words. Sure, it's my voice because I'm thinking in words, but it's not, it doesn't come from me. And that is how I distinguish those thoughts when I do get those connections. Um, and I wish I could hear, because it's not like a different person's voice. It's
Mhm.
mine, but
Mhm.
they're not my words. So um and a lot of the times it's very easy to tell that they're not my words because they'll use different vocabulary, they'll speak
Mhm.
differently, that sort of thing. One of my very first connections I made was with a random stranger who I did not know in school. Her grandmother came to me and was like, "Hello, hi, um, hi. Can you tell my granddaughter that I'm okay and that I love her honey bunny?" And I remember walking down school and being like, why am I thinking that? Why am I thinking about that?
Yeah.
That's weird. And then I remember going into the auditorium and just hearing, there she is. That's her. She's sitting right there. Go talk to her. Please. Go, 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 go. And I was like, oh my God. I have to. I had never told a stranger about a connection ever in my life.
Mhm.
And I walked up to her and she was on her phone and I just sort of like stood there like total like mom I threw up pose, like just
Yeah.
like standing there staring at her, and she would just sort of look up and was like, yes. And I remember being so nervous. I was just like, hey, because how do you even start? So I looked at her and I was like, hey, so did your grandma die? Why would you say that? I now know how to make connections better, but my very first one, I was like, hey, did your grandma die? Did your grand? And she just sort of, yeah.
Oh
And I was
my
like, okay. Well, she says that she loves you, honey bunny, and that she's like doing all right. And this girl looked at me and just like tears started to well up in her eyes. And I was
god.
like,
Oh.
oh no, oh, I don't know what to do with this. I don't know what to do. Like, I was brand new. And so I just sort of, like, what do you do? I felt very much like just there. I did not know what to do. And so I just sort of
Yeah.
sat next to her and she was like, she passed away yesterday, and just sort of kind of unloaded. She was like, she called me honey bunny, blah, blah, blah. And I just sort of sat there and listened to
Yesterday.
her. And afterwards, she was like, thank you, thank you. Yeah, yeah, yep. The day before, the day previously. And
Oh my god.
I would just let her talk about her grandmother. Um, and then she said thank you, and we hugged as total strangers. We just hugged it out, and she left. And I remember just hearing that voice being like, "Okay, thanks," and then it was gone. And it was such a wild experience and very validating, of course.
Oh
But
yeah.
from that, I knew like, ooh, I think figure out how to talk to people.
Yeah.
I need to do this more so I can figure out how to make that connection without just like T-posing in front of them until they look at me all weird and then me saying, hey, did your grandma die? Like, that's probably not the best plan.
So who else have you connected with that's beyond the living?
Yeah, from the beyond.
The beyond.
Yeah. So not a lot. Like I said, only the strong calls come in, and I just answer when the phone rings. I've made a few connections. I made a connection with that grandmother. I've made a connection with he was a skeptic, also loved that. His uncle came through, and basically said, "Oh, I know he's really mad at me. He's super pissed, and you know, just tell him that like I don't like it's fine. Being angry is like normal, and he has like a lot of guilt around being angry with me." And so I told him, I said, you know, I'm getting a male presence. I'm pretty sure it's an uncle. Do you have an uncle that passed away? He said, yep. And I was like, cool. Not cool, but like, great. I've got that.
Awesome, dude. Very cool of you.
Totally radical of you. So yeah, but I was like, okay, they are coming through to me. This uncle wants you to know that being angry is normal, and he is not upset with you for being angry, and you shouldn't feel guilty with being angry. And this poor man, like, didn't cry, but just kind of went very quiet and looked at me, and I said, you know, he loves you, and I think that he wants you to stop holding that guilt with you because of his death. And I started to get more of the picture as the uncle is like talking to me. And I said, he also told me like, oh, I'm really proud of him for choosing choosing to be an EMT firefighter. I'm very happy for him, but I don't want him to feel like it's just because he feels like he needs to because of me.
Yeah.
So I said, is your uncle like a firefighter or an EMT? He said, yeah. And to make a long story short, what we discovered through the reading is that guilt was because his uncle passed away during this man's birthday, and his uncle had promised to be at his birthday and went out to fight a fire and passed away in that fire. And he was angry that his uncle didn't come to his birthday party. And mind you, he was a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
And when he grew up, he felt very guilty.
Yeah.
Very guilty for being angry with his uncle for so long. And I think it was really good for him to hear that his uncle isn't mad at him for being angry. Mm-hmm. And that he's very proud of him for then becoming an EMT and wanting to be a firefighter, kind of in honor of his uncle. And we had a good talk. It was a good connection. And he didn't believe anything at the beginning, and afterwards was like, you've made a believer out of me. Thank you for that. And I think those connections are very special.
Yeah.
To me, because they get to have closure in a sense. So I've made contact with an uncle. I get a lot of connections from sometimes if it's somebody who's passed on and it's just like an energy. I don't know the name or anything like that. Mm-hmm. I'll just be like, oh, there's a feminine energy who's recognizing.
Which is exactly how, like, I would describe when I was talking about, like, death and things like that, where it's just an energy, it's just a vibe that you get. It's not necessarily a person.
Exactly.
Maddie in the chat is saying Maria from a few months ago.
Okay, this is a good one. This is a story. So Maddie contacted me and said that she believes that there is what Maddie and I call passerbys, which is just energies that are literally passing by. So they just sort of stop by in your space. They are very attracted to spaces that they believe they're going to be heard or seen. And a lot of the times it's people who don't quite recognize that they're gone. They're gone yet. So they're sort of wandering around.
They haven't fully accepted that
people
they're gone.
Who are sensitive can see them. Exactly. So passerby comes in and Maddie contacts me and says, I think it's a passerby. I don't really know if you can get in contact with them. But if you can, if they do come to you, I'm just kind of wondering what's up and what I can do to like help them move on. And I was like, cool. I'm not really expecting much of it, but I do kind of just be like, if you want to come to me, I can hear you, I can see you, we can help. And a person does come to me, and Maddie describes them as young, but they come to me as I know they're an older person. I can see why they're young, but I know that they're old. People basically can present however you want to be presented after you pass on. So because you're not, your physical body is no longer there to kind of like contain you, so you can basically present however you would like in the beyond. So we kind of start talking, and it's a woman, and she goes, no, I passed away like not too long ago. You could probably find me in the obituaries. And I was like, oh, okay. And I could tell that she was Latin of some sort, and very much reminded me, I'm Puerto Rican, and so very much reminded me of my abuelo, very like a old soul, and I knew that this person was Latin of some sort. So I'm looking around for woman who is Latina, and at that time, but I didn't even tell Maddie. Maddie was like, I'm pretty sure that this person's Latina, because that's the kind of energy I'm getting. I was like, she is, so let me look. And I was looking up the obituaries, and Maddie then messaged me and said, I'm pretty sure that this person's connected to some of my books. I just went to an op shop and bought a bunch of books. Thrift store. Did I say op shop? I'm sorry. That's what they call it here.
That's okay.
And I and bought a bunch of books, and now I'm home with them, and I'm pretty sure that she's connected to this because it's a book of poetry. It's a book of poetry, and it's I'm Spanish, I believe, but definitely it's a book of poetry in Spanish or something like that. So I'm looking at the obituaries, and Maria pops up, and she's like, yeah, that's me. And Maria passed away, I think a week before we were talking, not that long before we were talking. And I'm reading her obituary, and amongst everything, it says that she loved to read. She loved to read. She was, that was one of the things that she loved to do. And Maria said, yeah, that's me, and that's my book. So I immediately contact Maddie, and I'm like, we were right, I found her. So I sent her a picture of Maria, what she looked like. And Maddie's like, yeah, I think that's her. From what I can see, I think that's her. And Maddie did a wonderful thing of placing Maria's book on her altar. Just sort of as an acknowledgement of Maria, and acknowledging that that was her book. Those were her things, and that they're sacred now that she's passed on. And with that, Maria left, and she moved on. And I just like it was such a wonderful experience. Very rarely do I get to see that person and what they looked like when
Mm-hmm.
they were alive. So it was very lovely getting to meet Maria and helping with that. And Maddie said that yeah, as soon as um, she placed the book on her altar, Maria left. Maria moved on. So
Oh, how
it was a
sweet.
very good experience.
I love
Very
that.
pleasant. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, yeah. So we do get passerbys like that, or somebody specific connects. But you do have to. I think another one with Maddie is we sat there and she said, you know, I feel a feminine energy, but I don't really know. I think it's my grandma, and I was like, I don't see a grandma. And we sat there for a second, and I said, I don't think you have an aunt, but like it's coming through as an aunt. And she just sort of looked at me wide-eyed and she said, "Yeah, my father had a sister that passed away
Mm-hmm.
very early, very very early in life." Um
Maddie says
and
here, she
it
says, "Oh, I
was
forgot that I had an
uh
aunt."
yeah. She's like, "Yeah, I have an aunt." But yeah, so we had that experience where Auntie was looking after the family. So, but yeah, it is very rare, but I do cherish those moments where I get to connect
She
with
says
people and energies.
she says
But a
that's why
lot of
it
what
was
I do is
so she says that's why it was so shocking is cuz she forgot she had an aunt.
yeah. And she kind of sat there kind of stunned and just sort of stared at me, and I was like, but you don't have an aunt. Like I thought I was wrong, I thought something was, and I was like, you don't have an aunt. And she was like, I forgot I had an aunt. I do. And I was like, mind you, at this point we've been friends for 10 years. You would think that I would know if she had
Yeah.
an aunt or not. Like, yeah. So yeah, but those experiences are great to have, but I do have to disconnect from them after I'm done with readings, just because you can't carry it. You kind of got to let it go. A lot of people show you through their readings the darkest points.
So how do you
Uh,
disconnect? How do you kind of clock out with it then?
yeah. So there are a lot of ways that you can do that. Smoke cleansing is a great way. Um, it's majority a mindfulness practice of just thanking you know, that person for revealing that information, um, and then kind of imagining that disconnection.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of it happens a lot with in witchcraft, grounding
Mm-hmm.
rituals where you sort of envision that energy sort of going into the ground of the earth, and you can either pull energy up or dispense energy into. It's exactly like that, of just sort of imagining that connection, kind of letting go. So I think of it like a person holding hands. That connection is just, we're just going to, you know, squeeze a little extra tight and then let go,
Mm-hmm.
in order to be refreshed, I guess, for the next reading, and make sure that you don't have to carry that. It's theirs. It's theirs to deal with. I don't want to carry it for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So that brings
Um
us into kind of the next thing that we wanted to talk about, where we can start diving into like the magic aspect of this. And even right now, that's basically one episode so far.
yeah,
We've wrapped up
cool.
one episode, so then I'm gonna cut this up into little bitties. So that'll be our first
Little
one.
bitty.
And then we'll have this next one now. Let's start diving into the magic of it. Let's start diving into theories and things like that. But let's start with the veil, because that's something a lot of witches talk
Yep.
about. Um,
Yeah.
Tell me about it. I know about it, but like I want to hear what you know about it.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think, especially like when I started listening to your podcast, I was very interested because you have a very special relationship with the veil. Not a
Mhm.
lot of people get to pass through it and then come back. You
Mhm.
get to pass through it, you don't get to come back a
Yeah.
lot of the times.
Yeah.
So the what a lot of people are talking about really when we're talking about the veil is sort of that in between space between our reality as we're experiencing it and the beyond, something different, a different reality that we experience differently. So the idea of like a Venn diagram is great, because it illustrates that, you know, we have these sort of,
Yes.
yeah, exactly, we have these sort of differing existences, different perceptions and realities, and sometimes they get close enough to cross. So the space in
Yes.
between those two circles is this veil, is what we would call the veil, and it gets thinner
Yeah.
sometimes, and sometimes people are just more perceptive of it, can see a little bit clearer through it.
Yeah.
And I would say that like my relationship with it is that I can just see through it a little bit better. Um, but there are people who experience like paranormal type of things. They are experiencing when that veil gets a little too close and crosses over. And there are places that harbor a lot of energy, and that's why the veil tends to get a little bit thinner there. And there are places where you're just at the right place at the right time and they cross. So, and that's what I would say that people typically experience when they are having paranormal um, activity or experiences. It's just when that veil is getting a little too close to our reality and our perception of what we're living now.
So with these like this Venn diagram in the last podcast that I had, I talked about how some of them may be dead people that were a part of our timeline, and some of these paranormal experiences may just be two timelines or two realities that are just touching each other. What do you think of that theory that I've been running on?
Yeah. So definitely, we know that everything has energy. We know that.
Yeah.
It's very provable. It's it's very acknowledged. We all have energy. Everything has energy, and energy can neither be created nor destroyed. So it has to go somewhere.
Well, it's like when we first
And
chatted, we were talking about
so
like when you're able to like walk into a room and like read the room and like feel the energy. You walk in, you're like, oh, something happened. There's tension. Or you walk in and it's like, oh, it's a party. Everyone's vibing. Like there's that energy. You're able to read a room. Like we do that just as a survival thing in our day-to-day lives of just being able to understand the situation of what's going on. So of course, like when we
yeah,
take it and we're like this energy and just expand it even further than that, that's what we mean by
yes,
energy. It's the vibe. It's being able to read
yes,
a room, like that kind of thing. But expanding it, going
exactly.
further with it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Everyone has experienced the heebie-jeebies or getting creeped out, or even the feeling of like falling in love or being attracted to somebody. These are all energies that we experience all of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, you know, when we're talking about these different types of realities, the world and how we know it holds these different energies. And I kind of think about it like um, that energy is just sort of traveling a little too far outside of its circle, and that it sort of pushes up against that veil. And while I believe that a lot of times those paranormal experiences might be, again, people that have existed, I think it's just sort of the manifestation of the energy that was held there by something, someone, um, either in a different time or that, you know, we have that isn't close to us in history or sometime recent. It's just sort of that manifestation of that energy. So I definitely believe that there are different I think that time is all wibbly wobbly. I should say that. Time is all wibbly wobbly, and we try to confine it in this very linear idea when that's not really what time is.
Yeah.
So things that we're experiencing in our our world, that we know, our perception, could be quite different than just something on a different axis, time being experienced on a different axis, and sometimes they'll sort of hit and cross over. So that's kind of my idea about it.
Have you by chance been watching Loki recently on Disney Plus?
I haven't. I
Okay.
am not. Is I hear it's good. I've seen the Tom Hiddleston thing where he's like on his knees, and I was like, Tom,
No,
that's not
and
your
like,
first time. But other than that, I have not seen it.
well, watch it and maybe we'll do a follow up of what you think, cuz there's a part that's in it where I'm hearing echoes. Hold on, what's going on? Oh, can you hear me?
Are we a little frozen?
Apparently we are
I can
frozen,
hear you.
but you can hear me?
The video.
Okay, no worries. I'll just keep chatting.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, so in Loki there's a thing called the TVA, and basically it's these group of people that run the main timeline. And if anybody goes outside of the main ideal timeline, then they have to be basically taken out of that timeline, and the timeline needs to be fixed because things just keep happening where it's creating a bunch of alternate timelines. What do you think of that?
Oh, okay. Very interesting.
Yeah, it's like stabling the timeline is like their thing that they're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I do believe that there is sort of this, while I don't believe that the universe has any type of plan necessarily, or an end goal, because I feel like if there's a plan, there's an end goal. I don't really think that's kind of how it works, but I do believe in this idea of like balance.
Yeah.
Of if something is knocked off kilter, it has to be fixed. And I think that is why we experience some of the things that we do. I know that you've talked about sort of like this idea of like the reality hopping.
Yes.
I feel like those types of things, or the Mandela effect, these things are, I think, all the result of something being knocked off kilter and the universe trying to get it to shift back, if that makes any sense.
No, that totally makes sense. Well, and it goes into like time, what you were saying being wibbly wobbly, and that it's just like it's so incredibly fragile that we don't know if like we make one decision and then another version of us is doing a completely different decision that we would have made in that moment. There's a strong possibility that there's all these alternative timelines, or even a timeline that's going on where you're not even in it.
Yeah.
Well, I know when we first chatted, we brought up the egg theory, which is one of my favorite theories. And if y'all don't know about it, I mean, just YouTube it. Just the egg theory, it will come up. It's like a little space video with like a little egg in it. But let's talk about egg theory a bit, because this kind of does play into it with time. Do you want to explain it? Go for it.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. So what really interested me within the egg theory, and to TLDR it, the egg theory is basically referring to the idea that when you pass on from what you are experiencing right now, you get reincarnated kind of into the body of everyone else that you've ever experienced. So that's every person you've met, every person you haven't met,
every person in the world that's ever existed.
And once you've done that, absolutely. Yes, and that should be made like a clear distinction. That's in the past, that's in the future, that's right now. As soon as you've experienced everyone else's experience, you become, it says, in the theory, a god. And what I think of as a god is really just like a very well-fed energy, somebody who has lived a lot and has been energetically like filled, basically, to have experienced all of these different types of things. Um, so after you've experienced everyone and everything, you get to rest. You get to sort of ascend, basically.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting because a lot of religions have this same idea of reincarnation, of experiencing different people who you've met, who you haven't, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I really like about the egg theory is it causes people to think about how they're treating other people. Because one day
Yes.
you might be on the other end of
Yes,
that.
exactly.
You might be that person. And if you are a horrible person and you treat people very poorly, you will have to come back and experience how you treated that person poorly. And I think that is the idea. I know you've talked about it before, of like the idea of like heaven and hell.
Yes.
I think that while hell isn't like a physical plane,
Yeah.
if you were a nasty, evil person and you would have to come back and then experience those things that you did to people, I think that's hell.
That could definitely be a version of hell, for sure.
Hell enough for you to have to. Absolutely, yeah. So, that's what fascinates me most about the egg theory, is the idea that the way that I'm treating people now is how I'm basically treating myself.
Yeah.
How am I treating me? And I think that's really special and interesting.
Well, yeah, and it pulls in that all religions, at the end of the day, are all preaching the same thing, and all these theories at the end of the day are all basically saying the same thing of, in Christianity it's treat others the way you want to be treated, but it's that same exact thing where it's just like, just be who you wish people would be to you. Like, I don't know how else to explain it, but the way that it's said is just treat others the way you want to be treated. I feel like that's the easiest way to put it.
It really is. That is the easiest way to put it. And we have these the same ideas that different religions just try to explain differently, use different words for, label them different things.
Practices are the same, the words are different.
Different, yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that is sort of pretty much common in all religion is this kindness, this kindness to other beings, and to our world. And I think that the only thing that changes throughout religions is why we should be kind to others. In Christianity, it's because we're sinning against God if we don't. In the egg theory, we're sinning against ourselves.
Yeah.
We're being cruel to ourselves. With my dad, he's Buddhist, and the reason why the main thing with Buddhism is suffering. It revolves around suffering. How suffering is inevitable. Everybody suffers. How do we help people that are suffering, basically?
Yeah.
And the idea is to follow the Eightfold Path and accept and move past suffering. And I remember when he was telling me about why he's vegetarian, as a Buddhist, why he's vegetarian, and he said, well, if I kill the animal and the animal is feeling fear when I kill the animal, and then I eat the animal, I am fear. All I'm made up of is fear.
Wow.
And I've caused suffering to another animal, and I'm consuming that. Therefore, I am suffering. I am fear. And I remember being like, wow, I've never heard that perspective.
Yeah.
Before. Because it was a very spiritual perspective. A lot of times the reasons are for health reasons or for the environmental reasons, that sort of thing. But I had never heard it in a spiritual type of explanation before. So it's
Yeah.
very interesting. But yeah, we're all trying to come up with different words for the same idea, and the only thing that differs is why we do it.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why I moved on from Christianity was because I didn't like the reason why I loved being kind to others. I loved that rule, that golden rule.
Yeah.
But I didn't connect with the reason why I was treating
Yeah.
others
And the
good,
way other
you know?
religions explain it, where it's like, for some religions it's karma, for a lot of
Yeah,
pagan religions it's threefold law, and it all comes from like
right.
the source of why it's bad. Is it because God said so? Is it because I said so? Is it because the universe said so? Is it because my mom said so? You know, like it's just, it comes from,
Yeah,
where do you get your motivation from to be a good person? It doesn't matter where you get it from, as long as you are a good person. And that's what religions basically are saying at the end of the day. If we were to summarize religions, God forbid, but like summarize it, at the end of the day, it's just be nice.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
However you want to
Yep.
do that,
Be
just
kind.
be kind. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. And I also think that like the when it comes to that, like different types of religions, they like affect you personally
Yeah.
differently. So while the core of the religion will be like, for example, in Christianity, like be nice,
Yep.
because if you're not, you're sinning against God.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that mentality affects people differently. So while
Yes.
it's good that you are a good person, the reason why might affect you negatively.
Yeah, or how you treat
Because
people.
that's a lot of fear. Yeah.
Yeah, because especially in Christianity, and like, you know, no shade. We both are raised
Yeah, no, no
Christian, and
shade.
we are both no longer Christian people. But it definitely, you do see it in the Christian community, where it's like, oh, be kind, but only if they believe in God. You know, and then there becomes
Yeah.
clauses, and it's like, wait a second. Wait a second.
Yeah.
I thought it was just to,
Yeah.
you know, anybody else. And it's like, well, but if they don't believe what I believe, then they're wrong. It's like, that's not the quote. Mary, you've gone too far
Yeah.
left.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. Absolutely. I think the reason why I transitioned out of Christianity is for many reasons, but one of the reasons is it was like I felt that my acceptance their acceptance of me was extremely conditional.
Yeah.
It was extremely conditional, and if I did not behave in a certain way, um that would be revoked.
Yeah.
That sort of um love and acceptance would be taken away. And I didn't think that that was very fair. Um
Mm-hmm.
and I had to, it kind of came to this like crossroads of I felt more like I was performing, like I
Yeah.
was acting, um to be accepted and to experience that unconditional love, when in reality I could experience that sort of unconditional love within a different religion, or a different practice.
Yeah.
So I think that's like the number one reason why I left, at least, is because I loved faith. I loved it, but I hated the organized religion of it all. you know?
Yeah, no, I 100% get it. And that is also a very similar reason as to why I left the church as well, and kind of seeing what I would call, and for other people, it's not the same thing, but for me, it was just like cracks in the wall that I was like, I'm not here for this. I'm gonna go find something that just kind of fits me a little bit better. So, what is it that you ended up going to? What is it that you practice now?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm a pagan, very broadly pagan. Um, and I think what drew me towards being pagan is that it affirmed a lot of the experiences that I was having. So my experiences with energy, my experience with nature, um, it all sort of started falling into place of things that I had already experienced. And one of the things that I really loved about it, especially when combining witchcraft into paganism, is that it's very you centered. And
Yes.
I think a lot of the times that can be misconstrued as like selfish or uppity or that type of thing. But I felt like I wasn't taking care of myself. I
Exactly.
wasn't I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't
You are doing
um
things for other
and
people, whether it
so
be
when I
God
got
or
in
whatever, instead of doing things for you.
absolutely. And the thing I realized was that, like, I'm right now, this is just the vessel that I'm in. And really, I'm just taking care of the energy that's
Mm-hmm.
in this vessel. So, how do I take care of her? How do I
Yeah.
take care of that person? How do I take care of that energy rather than trying to make the vessel perform in ways that will get outward validation?
Well, in like one
I
thing
also
to.
joined paganism.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you. I know we're like off by like 5 seconds in the whole conversation, but one thing to think. Oh fuck, what was I gonna say? Ah! Oh shit! No, it was so good, and then it literally just left my brain. Oh, right, okay. So, one thing to think about, and this might seem bizarre to some people, but it's like we know that we are the only real thing we know is 100% real. Now, I'm not saying
Right.
necessarily like we don't know if God's real. It's like we don't even really know if grass is real. But I know that I'm physically here, and I know what I see and what I perceive, and I'm gonna just take care of that regardless of what's happening outside of me, outside of my body. I know what's going on with me is real. So I'm gonna just handle that. I don't want to deal with everybody else's shit. I don't want to deal with like making sure Jenny down the street is also a Christian so she goes to the same place as me. Like I'm like I take
Yeah.
care of me because I know that that is the one thing I can depend on and that I will always have forever. Jenny is going to move in like 3 years. Who cares? I'm with me
Right.
forever. And it's like
Yeah.
it's the one permanent thing that we have, and that's why for me why I ended up leaving Christianity. And actually the witchcraft that I do is different than yours, but I do satanic witchcraft, which really looks selfish to people on the outside because it's very much
Right. Yeah.
preaching, I am my own god. And I'm not saying I am a god, but I'm saying I am my own god of my world and my universe. I'm gonna make sure I'm taken care of, but I'm not gonna disrespect people along the way because they are their own gods and I need to respect them as such as well.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. Yeah, no, it's the same idea as far as like the you are your own god. I think so in the paganism that I practice, it sort of divides things into like a feminine energy and a masculine energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in Christianity, those two were seen as you either are one or the other.
Yeah.
And in paganism, it says you are both or
Yes.
neither.
Mm-hmm.
And you can exist in these sort of blurry lines between the two. And you can tap into different energies, masculine, feminine, something else. It can. I felt like it was more more affirming. First of all, more affirming as like a person who is LGBTQ plus. It's definitely more affirming because it explains in a spiritual way that you have this you have those different energies already
Yeah.
within you.
Yes.
And both of them in you.
Yes.
And
whether it be
I
sexuality
loved
or
that.
identity
And I
or
loved the
whatever.
idea. Yes, yes, absolutely. And I think another thing was that it made me feel small in a
Mhm.
very good way. I really liked how both of them are like you said, this is the only thing that we can prove is that you're experiencing what you are right now.
Exactly.
That's the only thing you can prove. So just focus on that.
Yeah.
Just focus on that. I also really enjoyed how it asks you to look within yourself.
Yeah.
A lot of witches will know shadow work and how important it is, and
Mhm.
um how deep it gets, and how you really are just trying to heal yourself.
Yeah.
You're just trying to heal that energy and to help guide that energy. I love talking about satanic witchcraft with you. I think it's
Yes.
so interesting. I think it's so cool. Um, so I know that my practice sort of revolves around, can involve like different sort of deity figures.
Yeah.
So personally, I work with Artemis. Um,
Lovely.
and
Lovely.
really, I only work with Artemis because they were the first entity that came to me.
Mhm.
um, and that's that's why. But I think of that as just like a a in the egg theory we talk about people like the experience, you have to experience everyone. I
Yeah.
just think that Artemis is the name of the energy that experienced enough things to become a little bit more wise on the whole matter
Yes.
of the beyond
Well, and
and
that's
also
even
our
how I
physical realm.
feel about
Yeah.
death too, where it's like death is more than just like what we are. It's
Yeah.
lived so much longer than us, and it's so much more than us being like it's just another person. It's so not. It is
Yeah.
energies like compounded onto energies onto so many things that we can't
Mhm.
even comprehend. It's so beyond
Right.
us.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I absolutely I loved hearing your experience with this sort of death the entity. I absolutely agree. Like just with my experience with things beyond the veil, I absolutely agree with that. You see what you want to see that will make you most comfortable in that time. It
Yeah.
really is just an energy to help you transition. Um, that it's I totally understand why you came, and we talked a little bit about this where you like I said it doesn't surprise me that when you came back you don't remember a lot of the conversations that were had between you and this sort of
It's just too
entity,
much to
um
comprehend.
because
Yeah.
there are just too much to comprehend. There really aren't any words, and also there are just things that we're not supposed to know until we fully moved on. There are really just
Exactly.
things that we're not supposed to be able to put into words until we experience it
Well,
later
in a
on.
lot of these
So I
experiences with
absolutely
just anything,
agree.
whether you think about it of like people beyond or energies beyond or deities or paranormal experience even, like there's some things that are just unexplainable, and if you try to explain it, you just can't. And like another point that I've made before with these entities and energies and whatever, we as humans love to humanize them, but now with meeting them and talking with them, I'm like, that's kind of insulting because they aren't like us, you know? Like,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
are so much more, and they can do so much more, and they can comprehend so much more, that us being like, yeah, we look exactly like this ethereal being, I'm just like, how? Like, we are not the end game here. We are so far from it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I definitely agree. We do have to sort of I mean, humans do this with very simple things like us finding, when we look at clouds, cloud gazing, and we see
Yeah.
certain shapes, or we look at like popcorn ceilings and we see faces.
Yep.
Um, we are trying to. Our brain is trying to make sense of what we're taking in. So
Yeah.
the first thing that it's going to go to is another human being, and something that looks like us, because it's something that we can comprehend easier.
Exactly.
But absolutely, it is kind of an insult to these ethereal beings, and
It
I
makes it
totally
palatable.
recognize that we are looking at. Yeah, yes, absolutely. That's a very good word to use. Yeah, it's how we kind of dumb it down to make it palatable for us so that we don't get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Even Christianity has this where they kind of tell you that angels look sort of humanoid, but then you read the
Yes.
Bible and they're just like spheres with a bunch of eyes and
Yeah.
giant wings and all of these types of different viewings, and we just kind of make them cherub-like and pretty because that's palatable for us, when really
Yeah.
they're these sort of like enigmas of energy. Like, yeah. So definitely, we definitely do dumb them down
Yeah.
to make it make sense for us.
Well, and it kind of brings into, I know I think I've brought this up before. We definitely talked about it when we chatted, of just like this big puzzle of the universe. Is there mortality to the universe? Like, is there a good and a bad? Is the universe paying attention to us, or are we just floating on by, or are we in that egg theory where we're just incubating until we become one of these energies and entities? And why are these energies and entities even talking to us? Why do they care about us if we're just ants on a hill, you know? Like, the puzzle of the universe is so insanely huge, and there's so many things that happen just in this world that we can't comprehend. We can't even comprehend most of the shit that's in the goddamn ocean.
Oh my god. Oh god, the ocean terrifies me.
Oh my god, same.
Terrifies me. Oh my goodness. It's so funny. Yes, like we struggle to understand things on our very physical plane.
Yeah.
So trying to make sense of it all in a spiritual sense is obviously going to be a lot harder. But I do like how a lot of pagan practices and witchcraft keep you present.
Yes.
And within the realm of things that you can experience.
And things that you can change and you
like
have at least some control over.
Right, absolutely. It keeps you focused on the things that are here and in the now, and things that you can change, and making the best of
Yes.
this physical experience. I heard somebody talk about it, and I wish I could remember their name on social media, but they basically said, how I look and who I am as like a physical being is really none of my goddamn business. It's really none of my business, because I am not this.
Yeah.
I am the thing that's within me. So this is kind of just sort of situational, but really, how can I care for that being within me?
I love
how
that.
can
That's
I
beautiful.
make sure that I can just yeah. It's like the outside is really none of my business. I like to decorate it sometimes, sure.
Yeah.
But really, the thing I want to care for is that being inside. And I think for me, the best way to do that was through being pagan and practicing witchcraft.
I love that. I love that. I know last time we chatted off air, I'm going to pull us back a lot, so don't mind me.
Yeah.
But I mentioned this in the last episode too, and I thought of it also when you were talking about angels and all that stuff, and how in the Bible it's written one way, but how we actually perceive it is a completely different way. And one of those is hell. and what hell is. And I remember we were chatting about it, and I brought it up in my last podcast, and I was like, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to wait till the next one because you explained it so well of like what hell was described in the Bible versus what we've turned it out to be. So if you would do me the honors, please, of explaining the originations of hell.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. It does come in handy to have been a Sunday school teacher for a while and getting all the questions from the little kids. But yes, so hell in the Bible, really as we took it nowadays is this sort of physical plane, physical realm that we go to if we're bad, if we're naughty.
After we pass.
When really
yes.
that we know that translating yeah, we know that translating a super old text like that, there are going to be some things that are lost in translation.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those things was the actual description of hell. Basically, hell wasn't this spiritual realm that we go to and we're naughty. It was a very physical thing. It was a very physical place that you could go that basically was like a landfill type of place. And that was what they were describing as this like really horrible place. That was hell. Not this sort of spiritual place that we go to if we're naughty. It really is, they were just trying to say that you're gonna feel like you are in a dirty garbage place.
Yeah.
And that is what it's going to feel like. They were really, I think a lot of times we take the Bible too literally. Yes. And we kind of make it like, oh, that's a place where we go. No, that's a thing that we feel. That's how they were trying to say. We say things all the time. We're like, oh, I feel like trash. I feel like garbage today. They were basically saying, well, if you're bad, you'll feel like garbage. You'll really rotten and like garbage. And we sort of took that and mixed it up to be this physical place where we're gonna go, and it's simply not true.
Yeah, and people with like
that wasn't what they were trying to get at all.
Exactly, and people with NDE experiences will often talk about how, you know, I went to hell, I saw it, I saw hell, I was there, and I thought about like my NDE experience, and I talked about this in the last episode where maybe what I did experience is what other people would call hell, where for a while I did just have like nightmare loops, and there was some horrible things that were happening to me, and this was mostly when I was in my coma. I wasn't necessarily dead, I was just in my coma experiencing these things, but somebody might turn around and be like, that is hell, you went to hell, you were being tortured, and then you got pulled out of it. But like, it also could just be a nightmare because I was on fentanyl. Like, and it could be anything. And another way that I explained it is it's like, imagine if, because a lot of the things that I visited was what I believe was other realities and other timelines, and I got to kind of jump into those and see what was going on there. And the way that I best could explain it was, imagine being in 2005 and you go to sleep and you wake up mid-2020. You would think you're in hell too. Like, you'd be like, what the fuck is going on? It's not necessarily that it's hell, it's just somebody else's reality that's happening in that instance specifically, or it's just a nightmare, or it's just the drugs, or it's just, I don't know, anything else. It's like, some people might totally describe that as hell. For me, I was just like, that was just not very fun. I'm sure it has to do with the drugs.
Yes. Well, and I think there is a distinction to be made that when you were experiencing death, that experience was very peaceful. It was only when you were alive, and in this sort of coma state, that you experienced negative things.
Yes!
And I think that's very telling. I think that's very, very telling of the experience. And that's why I think people shouldn't necessarily be afraid of death, because dying is not an unpleasant experience. The only time you had sort of these like negative things happening was when you were brought back to life.
Yeah,
and you were alive, and we're on sensible, you know?
Exactly, and it goes into another theory that I hear that I love playing around with is that we are actually in hell right now. The experience in life that
Right
we're
now.
currently experiencing is hell. We already lived a life. We are now in hell. We're in the bad place. If you've watched The Good Place, like we are in the bad place. This is why. And and like that's why like sometimes I think about it where I'm like, fuck, I really believe that theory sometimes because I'm like, why do only horrible, terrible people succeed in our world? Why are all these horrible, terrible things happening? Why is there a space race happening and people are still starving? What the fuck? Like, we are in hell. Maybe we're in hell. Maybe this is it. Maybe we've already arrived. I don't know. But at the end of the day, it goes back to like with my belief, I know what I experience and what I need, so I'ma just take care of my shit. And the rest of the world is gonna be on fire. And of course, I'm still gonna go out. I'm still gonna, like, riot when I need to riot. Be an activist when it's, like, definitely need. Or just be an activist all the time. Constantly fight for other people. Constantly do the right thing. Still try to make change in this world where we can. But at the end of the day, I know that I can only vouch for myself. And if I die, am I happy with what I did while I was here? Because we might not go anywhere. We might just be dirt in the ground.
Yeah.
We don't know. And I don't want to depend on, oh, I'm going to go into this oasis when I die because I was a good person. I want to just be like, you know what? I want to make this oasis here in case I die and just go into the dirt.
Absolutely. And two things. One thing is the idea like, oh, we just go into the dirt. I think paganism I used to be very afraid of death, and I still get twinges of it sometimes. But I think it sort of shifted my perspective, and it became like, it went from like, oh my God, I'm going to be dirt in the ground to, oh my gosh, I'm going to be dirt in the ground.
Yeah!
I get to be dirt. How cool is that?
And then I'll turn into a tree, and then I'll turn into oxygen, and yeah.
Like it sort of shifted that perspective. And I think another thing when we talk about sort of activism, in that sort of sense, what really got me into it was this idea like of, so you're telling me you're just going to treat somebody different because of the vessel that they're in? And because they have a different perspective?
Yes.
That's weird. And to this whole, it made me like, it makes me like super uncomfortable that it's like, but they're not that vessel. They're what's in. And I want to, and their perspective is different. They're sacred. In a lot of religions, like people with different perspective, there are two-spirit people, that indigenous people will talk about their belief in this. The two-spirit people, they're sacred because they have an other, more rare experience. That's something to be cherished. It's like you have such a different perspective from mine. That I should learn from, that I should absolutely learn from, and to make it harder for them to experience things as an energy just because of the way that their vessel is. That's a little fucked up. I'll riot in the streets. I'll riot in the streets for that.
Well,
you
also
deserve
it's
to have
like
just the same, like, you have every right to have every single opportunity to take care of that person inside, that being inside. You should be able to have every single opportunity without worry that your physical vessel is going to be in danger.
Exactly.
Or, unhoused or starving. Like,
exactly.
That don't sit right with me. Right.
Pop off, let's go.
Yeah, like, and I think that's it's a good segue kind of talk about the differences between America and New Zealand.
Yes, perfect. Yes, let's get into it. Wait, before we get into the political stuff though, before we dive into that, the one thing I want to talk about, because it's still spiritual vibes, is you told me the graveyards are different in America versus New Zealand, and I think we should start there, and then we'll just pop off, because after that, it's gonna be a rant, and we know it.
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things that I noticed with my mom actually was that like the graveyards were different vibes, and I think if you're a spiritual person, you know that graveyards hold a lot of energy. Um, and in America, when I would pass graveyards, and I still do this. I do a couple of things. I turn down the music that I'm listening to. I turn it all the way, like I turn it off really. Part of that is because I use it as a very small ritual to acknowledge and have a moment of silence for people who don't get visitors anymore, who
Yeah.
are, either their lineage has died off or they don't get visitors. I turn it off to sort of acknowledge them and um, give them a moment of silence for that. And then another reason is because in America, the chattering was so loud.
Well, and explain like, what you mean by that.
Talking, and it wasn't just so basically, since I have not my words, but it is my voice. It felt like a bunch of different me's in my head were just all trying to talk at once, and it's very
whenever you're in like American graveyards, you can hear
too much.
You can like hear them.
Yes, yeah. So I can hear them, and I can't really make out what anybody's saying because they're all talking at once. But it's just chatter. It's just this constant sort of like buzzing, static noise that I hear. And a lot of the times it's worry. I can't hear what they're saying, but I can feel
the emotion, yeah.
And it just kind of feels like, yeah, exactly. Like if you were pacing back and forth, worrying a bunch.
Yeah.
Feels like that. And it was a lot. And then when I moved to New Zealand, we had this graveyard that was, probably about like 2 miles away from my house, and we'd have to pass it. We're in a very small town, so there's like one road.
Yeah.
That you go down, that's like a coastal road to get to different places. And you have to pass this graveyard. And I was in the car with my mom, and we went past it, and I went to go turn the music down, and I did, but I realized that there wasn't any talking.
Yeah.
It wasn't this like mind-numbing static. It was very peaceful. And I was like, and I just sort of sat back, and I kind of looked at my mom, and my mom looked at me, and it was the Spider-Man meme again. And I looked at, and I said, that was pretty quiet. And she was like, yeah, that was pretty quiet.
We just got
not a lot of chatting.
Yeah, we just got a question from Danikin. They're saying, that's really interesting. Is there a different ritual for graveyards out there than there are in America? Do they do it differently out there, and that's why that they're more peaceful? Can you go into that?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a lot of differences when it comes to how you handle death here, and a lot of it is because of the influence of the Maori people. Maori people are the indigenous people that are in New Zealand, and they deal with death very differently than in America. Now, the typical sort of funeral that will happen is basically you have the body, and the body will be occupied with a certain family member. Now the family member, it depends on like, so my partner, he's Maori, and his family had a funeral a couple of years ago for his grandmother. Now it was the job of his father and his mother to stay with the body, so that's sleep, eat, stay next to the body for 3 days. Now that is because they're basically accompanying the spirit and into the afterlife and thanking the vessel. It is a very different perspective when it comes to like cherishing the vessel. You spend time, because that's the house. that held that person for so long. So you want to thank that
Mhm.
vessel, and cherish them,
So that makes me
for
want
a
to
longer
ask.
amount of time. So
Oh, sorry. I know we're off weird. It makes me
go
want to
ahead.
ask though. So they have to be with the body after it's passed for these so many days. How do they preserve the body? Are you just sitting by a freezer the whole time? Like, how does this
Yeah.
work?
Yeah, so there are a lot of different preservation methods. One of the biggest one is going to be um, to oh my gosh, basically they embalm.
Mm-hmm.
Boom, got it. Embalm. They
There
embalm
it
the
is.
body. Um, but there are sometimes, yeah, there it is. But traditionally that's not really a thing. You do stay next to the body. You keep the body very clean. The body is cleaned. But I think that one of the things that is different is we have a perception that the body like rots really quickly,
Mm-hmm.
and that it needs to be taken away immediately to sort of avoid that decay.
Yeah.
When that's not really the case, it does take a much longer time for a body to decompose than we believe. So there are methods of preserving the body that aren't incredibly invasive,
Mm-hmm.
um, or not as invasive, that will preserve the body for the amount of time. Another thing is that it's a closed casket instead of an open one. Traditionally, it would be an open casket, but
Oh,
there is the option where if you don't want to embalm the body, where it's just a closed casket and you spend time with the body that way, to avoid
interesting.
any sort of the very natural but sometimes jarring process of decomposition.
Wow, that's beautiful. And it's sad that, in America, most people that are listening are from America and understand that it's like when people die, we're like, "Ah, don't talk about it. Put them in the ground and let's pretend it didn't happen." Like we're very against like appreciating death. We're like, "Oh, that happened and now I'm going to bottle this." Just bottle it up
Yeah.
right away. And that's something that, especially with this podcast, that I'm trying to like pull out of people where it's like, we should be talking about death. You should have a will. I don't care how old you are. You should have a will. You should know what you want done with your body. You should know, you should have plans. You should prepare for people in your life to pass. Like, it's not a morbid thing to think about and to plan. It's actually very important because, like, what you're saying, it's like American graveyards are apparently very loud because I'm sure they don't feel like they're at rest, that they got their closure. When in New
Right.
Zealand, it sounds like these spirits and these bodies and these energies and these entities, or however you want to describe it, like gets that moment to be like, thank you for being here. We love you. We care about you. We know it's going to be okay. When you're talking about in your experience with talking with people's grandmas, and it's like, hey, I just want them to know it's okay. I
Yeah.
want them to know that I'm fine. It's like if we gave people in America that opportunity to sit with their loved one and be like, I know it's okay. And I know that you're
Yeah.
fine, and I know that you're passing on, and you're moving into the next whatever that might be, and that's
Mhm.
okay. We need to work on that a lot more as a country, plus a lot of other
Yeah.
things.
No, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think a big reason is that one of the things that I hear from people, especially when talking to grandmas who have passed on, is that idea of I didn't get to say goodbye, or I
Mhm.
didn't, I didn't get to spend time. And I think that when you spend time with the body, it and this comes from being able to hear your loved ones after they've passed on, that time is for you.
Yeah.
They are already having a good time. They are fine. They are good. They
Yeah.
are okay. They they acknowledge you. They see you. They love you. They've said goodbye, whether you can hear it or not. Um, that time with the body is for you, and it's to sort of kickstart that healing.
Yeah.
because you want to be able to say goodbye. You want to be able to see them one last time and to hold them.
Yeah.
And that is very important for our healing, because they're okay, but for our healing,
Yes.
it's very good to be able to spend time with them one last time. And I think, um, yeah, here in New Zealand, they definitely acknowledge that a little bit more, and are it's more about a celebration of the vessel rather than mourning the loss of a person. It's
Yeah.
more of like, I know you've said it before, in your podcast. I think the last episode where it's you had this sort of like the jealousy a little bit of like the people who have
Yes.
passed on.
Oh my god,
Um,
yes. And it's so
and
hard to explain
yeah,
that to
yeah. So it's that,
people.
yeah, that jealousy is totally valid because they're really okay. Like they are absolutely
Yes.
fine. So you get to, instead of trying to make yourself feel sad about
Mhm.
it, you get to celebrate them moving on
Yes.
and being at peace and celebrating
Yes.
their transition. It's Yeah, it's more of like a yay, go you did it. You had this wonderful life. You had a life. You got to
Yes.
experience, and now you get to go on to something that's so much better.
Yes.
Congratulations. And
And
I
it's
love
so
that.
hard. It's so hard to talk about this to the public and even like right now in this moment because people then assume when I say stuff like this that they're like I'm pro unaliving yourself and like that came up as a big thing
Mm,
on TikTok where people are like, "Well, now I feel more comfortable with this decision that I'm in the process of making." And I'm like, "No, no, no, that's not what I'm saying." Like
right.
I
Right.
I may be jealous of death, and I'm very, you know, wrong word to use, excited when people
Hmm.
do pass on for them, but I'm not saying that you should. It's more of like when your time
Right.
comes, your time will come, however that may be. But even though I'm
Mhm.
jealous of it, I'm not ready to die. And I
Right.
know that about
Yeah.
myself. It's
Well,
like I'm excited to whenever that day comes, but I know that I'm not ready and that I just have more to do, whatever that may be. And that comes back to like, is there mortality of the universe? Does me being here even matter or not? I don't know. But again, also going back to what we were talking about, it's the only thing I do know is what I have here and what I have right now. And if I do unalive myself because I want to be in this death because I'm so jealous of it, I may just go into the dirt. There may not be anything else. There may not be more. But I know
right.
that what I have here and right now is true, is fact, and I can try to change this space that I'm in to be what I want it to be. Because even though I feel this way about death, that doesn't mean that I fully believe it either.
Right. Right. No, and that's absolutely true. There is a lot of, I think, you know, especially for me, like there's this feeling of like, well, I could be totally wrong. I could just not experience this. This could be a total fluke, one off. I could be very well wrong. And that might be, but I think a big thing to acknowledge is that this is the in the reality that we're currently experiencing. This is your one opportunity to experience it, how this vessel will experience it.
Yes,
Because
exactly.
if you go into another sort of vessel or a different reality or dirt in the ground, this is it.
Yeah,
This vessel is the one time you're going to be housed. This is your this is a very one time thing,
yeah,
as far as you being housed in this very specific perception. So take the opportunity to learn from it,
yeah,
um, to grow, and it is definitely hard sometimes. I think that this is the hard work, and
yeah,
we get to be free of it in whatever sense that is, either
Yeah.
dirt in the ground. Dirt in the ground doesn't have to work 40 hours a week. Okay?
Yeah.
So, you know, like, be excited for it. Don't let it be scary, but also don't let yourself go too soon. You might have
Yes.
another experience waiting around the corner that could change your perception and could make
Exactly.
being here better. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's so tough when I first started this whole thing because I'm like, I don't know how to talk about death in a positive way where people are going to also, what's the word I'm thinking of? Absorb it in a positive way as well. So that's
Mhm.
why, like, I want to open up these conversations with people like you and like other people I've been chatting with, and just my experience where it's like, we don't have to make it this big, scary thing. We just need to be
Mhm.
aware of it and respect it and understand it. Maybe not fully
Right.
understand
Yeah.
it, but respect it for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that, yeah, but that is one of the big differences from New Zealand culture
Mm-hmm.
into American culture. Um, and in this, in another spiritual sense, I think that they have um, a better balance. I would say they definitely, yeah. I've talked about the this sort of balance of the universe. They are very individualized when it comes to like balance. So
Yeah.
they cherish that the work life balance.
Yeah.
This they run on island time where they're
Yeah.
like, why are you rushing? What why are you going so fast? Like, you
Yeah.
don't need to rush through
Yeah.
your experience of things. I realize that, you know, people, when they say like, oh, I'll be there around like 12:30, if they're there at like 12:40, they really were there at 12:30. Like, they're
Yeah.
like, yeah, around 12:30.
Yeah.
It's around 12:30. It's 12:40, but and they weren't considered late by most Kiwis. So the there are also, if we're gonna go into the NZ culture, I will
Yes,
say that
please
it is
do.
not a utopia, and there are very real, yeah. I'll preface it by saying that it's not a utopia. There are very real issues that we definitely need
Yes.
to work on. Um, I will say that they just have a little bit more of a social safety net for people.
Yeah.
Um, and that's the main difference.
Yeah.
Is they have that understanding of a safety net. They don't see, uh you know, there's a saying that they say where it's like, oh, Kiwis are helpful and kind to a fault. So um if you can imagine, if you're like a people pleaser, that's kind of all Kiwis all the time,
Yeah.
all of the time. One time I got stuck on a beach and my like the battery in my car died, and it was super late at night. And I walked up to the nearest house that was like, we're in the middle of nowhere. It's on a rocky beach, and I walk up to this house and I knock on the door, and I'm expecting the worst because I've
Yeah.
just awoken these people in the middle of the night for to get some sort of help. There's no reception. So I'm knocking on these people's doors, and he answers the door, and the first thing out of his mouth is, "Are you all right? Are you okay?" And
Aw.
that was surprising. And I was like, I'm on the beach and my car doesn't work." And he goes, "Oh, that happens all the time with young folks. No worries at all." And he got in his truck and he
Aw.
drove me to my car and got it running again. And then he waited to see me like drive away safely.
Wow.
It was insane. We we've run out of gas on the side of the road one time during
Yeah.
a road trip, and the first person who saw us stopped. The very first person who saw us stopped and said, "Are you all okay?" And we said, "No, we're out of gas." And he went to his house and he got gas and he drove all the way back. His house was like 20 minutes away.
Oh my
Drove to his house,
god.
got gas, came back, and put gas in our car. And when we said, "Oh my gosh, here's some money for gas," he was like, "Oh no, I don't need to take that much.
Aw.
I'll just take a fiver. I'll take a tenner." And he took it, and we realized that he filled our entire tank. Definitely more than $5 worth of gas, but he filled our
Yeah.
tank so that we
Well,
could
and
get
plus
somewhere.
his
Like,
gas
they
too,
are
like that he took to like
helpful.
get there and back.
Like from his house. It was the first person. Like, people are so kind here. It's they want to they make eye contact with you. They say hi. That's a big thing. You can walk down the street and people will be like, "Hello, how are you?" And they genuinely care. They want to know. They want to know how
Yeah.
you're doing. It's
That's so
it's
beautiful.
wild. They'll off It is. They'll offer you a cup of tea. Most of the
Aw.
time, they'll absolutely offer you a cuppa, which is tea or coffee or warm drink, a hot drink of some sort. Um, a very yeah, just genuinely good people. They care. I think they're a lot less calloused than people
Yeah.
in America. But do you have any specific questions about like New Zealand that I can answer?
Well, if anybody has any that's listening live right now, please feel free to throw them in there. We don't have any quite yet, but I know last time we chatted, we were talking a bit about native New Zealand culture and the natives there.
Mm-hmm.
Dive into that
Yeah.
and tell us about what the natives are like.
Oh my God, great. When we first moved here, we had a family that lived right next to us. They were our next door neighbors,
Mm-hmm.
and they are Maori, and they, oh my gosh, were just so wonderfully kind and giving. And they definitely have a very like familial culture. It's centered around the family. They had quite a big family, which was great. The kids was so fun. They were running around. They made good friends with my sister. Almost instantly, my younger sister, and just yeah, really caring, really caring. They have great, wonderful, beautiful, vibrant culture. I went to my sister's kapahaka, which is basically that translates into group dance. And I got to see some of the songs that they sing, all of which were in Maori.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm definitely interested in learning more Maori, but a lot of places here and are Maori names. So we have I've got to learn just very little of the language. It's a beautiful language, and they have their own Maori channel, like a news channel, which is fully in Te Reo Maori, and it's excellent. Um, they have in grocery stores, some grocery stores will have their signs in English and in Maori. Maori
Oh.
is an official language of New Zealand. It's English and Maori. So a lot of things are in both English and in Maori.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very excited I get to meet my partner's uncle who speaks fluent Maori. So I can't wait to learn from him. Um, I got to experience some of their food, which is so good. Oh my
Oh.
gosh. So wonderful. Um, lots of fish and
Mm.
well duh, we're on an island, so lots of fish.
Yes, yes.
Super good. Fry bread, which is great. Definitely wonderful. There are some things happening within New Zealand that like definitely people should check out. There are two. So there's
Mm-hmm.
one where we have um, a dock that's trying to be built.
Oh.
But it's threatening the local penguins, um, which is
Did you say
like sacred
penguins?
wildlife, to the Maori people. We do have penguins. We have penguins,
Oh
little
my god.
ones. They're tiny. Yes. They're very cute. I'm trying to remember their name, but we have, I think they're blue penguins. They're really small and they're noisy, but they're so cute and they're wonderful. I also got to see a kiwi bird for the
Oh,
first time a couple weeks ago, and it was great.
that's so wonderful.
um, but yeah, so yeah, they're like a little basketball on stilts. They're very funny and wander around, and they're goofy.
Oh my gosh. I do have a question for
But
you.
yeah,
What is it
yep.
from moving to America to New Zealand? What took you a little bit of time to get used to? Like, what was kind of the culture shock for you?
Yeah, ooh, a good question. I think the yeah, that's it. So the work-life balance is really different here.
Yeah.
And when I started my job, I worked at a hotel, and I remember my partner wanted to take me on like a Valentine's Day trip to Auckland, which would require time off and a flight.
Mhm.
So I needed to ask for time off. Now, in America, asking for time off is extremely difficult, and
Yeah.
you get shamed for it. Um, a lot by your employer. And
Oh
it's
yeah.
very much like, is it an emergency? Like what's and also a lot of times it's unpaid. And I remember I was brand new. I had to ask for time off and I was working there for like a month and I was like, this is gonna go bad. This is gonna
Yeah.
suck so badly. And I walked up to my boss and I was like, hey, so can I how do I ask for time? Is there like a form, like a request? And she was like, "Oh yeah, you need time off." And I was like, "Yeah, my partner wants to take me to Auckland and we want to do this, like a little trip. So I don't
Yeah.
really know how that works." And she was like, "Ooh, that sounds like a lot of fun. Well, here's a form and you can fill it out." And I was like, "Now?" And she goes, "Yeah, do you know the dates?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she was like, "Cool, just write it down." And I wrote it down. And she looked at it and she like stamped it, signed it, and gave it back to me. And was like, "There you go, have fun." And I was shocked. I was just like, "Huh?" And she was like, "Yep, have fun." And I was like,
Uh,
"Am I getting am I getting paid?" And she was like, "Yeah, you have paid time off." And I said, "But I'm only part-time. I only work 20 hours a week." And she said, "Yeah, you still have 90 hours of paid time off." And I was like, 90? I have
90?
90 hours of
Oh.
paid, yeah, of paid vacation as a part-time worker. I only work 20 hours a week. Yeah.
Oh my
She was like, yeah.
god.
Uh-huh. I was like, and she goes, "You also have sick days." And I'm like, what? Huh?
What?
And then I was mystified. So I go to my partner and I'm like, "Paid time off? What are you talking about? We get paid time off." And he said, "Yeah, well, I've been working at my job for over a year. So I get 4 weeks of paid vacation that I can take consecutively if I wanted to."
Oh my
What? And
god.
he said, "We also have um paternity leave and maternity leave." And I'm
Wow.
pretty sure maternity leave is like 20 to 25 weeks of paid maternity leave. I was like, and they just give you that?
Well,
He
and
was like, "Yeah, it's
I'm sitting here
legally
like
required."
I'm sitting here like, wow, amazing. And then I'm like, oh no, shit, that's just like basic human rights. Like,
I think that's like the thing is like I'm mystified by that. And he was like, how do you live? He was just like,
that's the question, isn't it?
How do you live? And it's just, and you're like, painfully, you painfully get through it somehow. Like, it's, and another big shock was doctors, like going to the doctor. I had to go to the emergency room, urgent care, basically. And I went to urgent care, and I got seen within 10 minutes at an urgent care. I was mystified. And I got pulled back, and we talked for like 10 minutes. I already knew what was going on. I just needed medication.
Yeah.
And she was like, cool. So that's, I'll give you the medication. And now I'm prepared to pay a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I go up to the front, and the lady goes, oh, I hear your accent. Are you a New Zealand citizen? And I said, no, I'm not. And she's like, oh, it's going to be higher rates. And I was like, ah, shit. Yeah, no, I totally get it. And she was like, okay, that's $30 for the medication and the visit today. And I was like,
not
what?
30,000?
Like, yeah, I'm sorry, it's going to be $30.
I'm sorry, it's only $30.
And I was mystified. I looked at this woman, and she was like, and I was like, well, how much is it for like a New Zealand citizen? And she was like, well, yeah, I hope you get there soon, because if you were, it would be $4. It would be $4? Dude, she's like, yeah.
Oh my god, like with my surgery that I had, the one that we are talking about, the reason this whole podcast was started, do you have any idea how much the grand total of everything that I had done cost me?
I really want to be like $1 million.
$2 million. $2 million. Plus, there's change in there. But, insurance, blah, blah, all that shit, we only ended up, quote, unquote, thankfully, only had to pay, like, a couple $100,000. And it's just like, shut the fuck? And then you're over here like, I'm sorry, it's $30. I wish my medication was $30.
I was just like, and she was just like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, girl, don't apologize. This is like the craziest.
Take my money.
Thing to me. I was mystified. I was like, so yeah, that's probably the biggest thing, is like their work-life balance.
Yeah.
Their medical costs are super, super cheap. But yeah. So
that is so wild, and I know
it's way more relaxed over here.
It sounds like it for sure. And last time we were chatting, we were talking, and this kind of plays into it, where we were talking about how New Zealand seems to have like a pretty good level. Like there's obviously still going to be issues in the country and things that need to be worked on, but there always will be in life. Such is life. But you guys have a pretty good energy. You got things going. When, like you were talking about in America, the energy in America is just so not leveled out. It's so chaotic. It's so crazy. Like, nobody's on the same page. Nobody's vibing. We are not on island time. We will not answer the door for nobody. Like, we will put you in millions of debt and not blink twice about it. Like, it's so insane why it's weird to say, like, we live in the same time. And we live incredibly different lives. And it's like, it shouldn't have to be this way. Why does America have to have just... Why are we so, like... Why aren't we there yet? Yeah. Because we have the ability to evolve to this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really disheartening, and it's especially embarrassing almost. It's very embarrassing to be from America. Like, I know that Americans joke a lot about how it's like, oh, the rest of the world hates you. It's like, unfortunately,
it's true.
yeah, like it's true. Like it sucks. It
Yeah.
sucks a lot, but I do not blame them one bit.
No,
I don't blame
no.
them one bit. And like coming over coming over here, I I got jokingly called multiple times from different people. I would be jokingly called Donald Trump. They would be like,
Oh
"Oh,
God.
Donald, you're Donald Trump," and I was like,
Ah,
"Oh my God,
no!
no! What? Why are you calling me that?" Like it was. Oh yeah, oh yeah, and they sort of have this view of Americans, and then when coronavirus kind of went around and COVID started,
Oh.
and the best place to be was in New Zealand, and they saw how America handled it. Like, um, they were. It was sort of this really sinking feeling of like how selfish, just how
Yes.
not meat and potatoes selfish, but so abhorrently selfish. And
Yes.
I think like here the, the PSAs that we were getting was this is your family. Like
Yes.
these the people who live around, this is your whānau. This is your family.
Yeah.
You have to do this to protect your family.
Well, and let's talk
And
about it. Like, tell us
it
about
made it a lot easier.
tell us about the COVID experience out there and like your perspective with COVID, because we're still not done with it. But they're like, oh, it was only 15 months. It's like, only 15 months. That's a lot. Also, we're not done, bitch. Like,
Yeah, no, absolutely.
but yeah,
Absolutely.
tell me
So
about
the way
it.
that the New Zealand government, yeah, the way that the New Zealand government handled it was basically that they set up these levels. So these are levels of caution that require um, different responses accordingly. There are 4 levels. Level 1 being a relatively normal existence. The only things that happen at level 1 now, which we're at now, is contact tracing. So whenever we go into a business, we do not have to wear a mask,
Yeah.
but we do have to. There's Bluetooth. There's little things that you sign in basically and scan saying that you visited there, just in case there's an outbreak. They can trace it exactly back to where it happened.
Well, that's cool.
So we've got that. Yeah, no, it really is. You just take a little picture of something in your COVID app. We have an app for that. And
what the fuck? I want an app for that.
To get coronavirus, they can tell exactly. I know, yeah. So they can tell exactly where you've been, and they can alert people who were in that general area through Bluetooth that anyone around or near that area needs to go home, isolate, and get tested.
So I know we have something similar to that, but it's
response.
not that efficient that we have, where it's like, we'll get an alert on our phone that's like, somebody in your area was exposed and you might have gone to the places that they went, but it's very vague. It's very like, I'm in Denver, so it's like, somebody in Denver in your general vicinity, and then like 5 blocks around your radius went to the King Supers near you, so I don't know, you might have it. Like, it's like, okay.
Yeah, no, here it's like, exactly. Here it's very much like, if on Thursday you were in a subway at 10:45 a.m., you need to isolate and get tested. So
damn.
Definitely more efficient. Yeah. But yeah, so that's level 1. So pretty relatively normal. I know that they do ask that you wear a mask on public transit at level 1. That's basically the only 2 changes. And then level 2 is a slight amount of caution. So either there's a suspected case or 1 case. And that just basically means that you practice social distancing. If you're in the area of the outbreak, or like the case, you practice social distancing, that sort of thing. Masks are recommended but not required. And you basically wait to
Yeah.
hear about the news. Um, level three. Level three is a more intensified. That's a confirmed case. That's masks in public. That's social distancing. That is they basically take more steps to make sure that people are. They'll have limits in grocery stores, like how many people go in and out and stuff like that. Um, and then level four is total lockdown. Now we went into level four lockdown for about 6 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
and mind you, we do have a social safety net, so people were paid to stay home. People were still
Oh my
paid
God.
their wages.
Ah, to be in that
Yeah,
world.
and we stayed home. Yeah. Level four is very intense though. Only one person per household or bubble, as they call it, gets to go out and get groceries, or do
Mm-hmm.
any sort of um activity outside in the sense of like bills, or if you need to go to the bank, or if you need to go to the grocery store. Police officers have the ability to stop you if there are multiple people in a car or anything like that and ask you where you're going, and fine you if you are doing something that's not allowed, like going to a vacation home or going on a trip or something like that. They're allowed to fine you.
And
Um,
really
they
quick
masks are
before you
required.
continue on
Social
that
distancing.
question,
Mm-hmm.
as
Yeah.
an American, the moment it's like, oh no, the police can stop you and do something about it. Um, how's the are police brutality? Like, do you
So yeah,
actually like? Are you scared of your police, or is when you are stopped by a police, you're just like, oh, you know what? It happens. Yada yada. Move about your day, or can you be fine? Is it scary? Is it a scary experience?
yeah. So the first time that I was pulled over is a good experience to talk about when it comes to this, because I have never been pulled over, not in America, not once, and I
Mm-hmm.
came here and I got pulled over, and I'm rushing through my mind. I'm like, what am I being pulled over for? Oh my god, is my license and registration? Oh my god, what's going
Yeah.
on? I thought I had everything updated. What do I do? And I realized that it was late at night because I was traveling home from my partner's house, and I had a kind of beat up car, my first car here, and he pulled me over, and he kind of came up to me and he was like, "Hello, good morning, I guess, kind of late. Anyway, where are you headed?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm just heading home." And he was like, "Okay, cool." And he pulls out a breathalyzer. And I remember thinking, I was like, I'm not swerving. I haven't had a sip of alcohol. And he said, "Have you had anything to drink?" And I said, "No." And he went, "Okay, will you just count to 10?" So I counted to 10, and he looked at it and he showed me the negative result. And he was like, "All right." And he shined his light on my registration. So you have these little tags where it's a warrant of fitness, and
Yeah.
then you have the registration, and it's displayed on the very front of your car in these little pockets that attach to the window.
Mm-hmm.
And he shined his light, made sure that both of them were valid, and he was like, "Okay, you have a good night, bye." And I immediately called my partner and was like, "He stopped me. I wasn't swerving. He breathalyzed me. I don't know what to do." And he was like, "Oh, well, yeah, they can do that. They can randomly just pull you over for that." And I was
Why is
very
that?
surprised. Um, but a lot. Sorry.
Why is that?
So yeah. So New Zealand has an alcohol problem.
Ah.
And that's one of the things. It's not a utopia. It has an alcohol problem. So if they um if you're out at a weird time, or you're swerving or anything like that, they can stop you. On Saturdays and Fridays in town where it's busy and there's a lot of bars, they have checkpoints that you go through,
Mm-hmm.
and they're fully legal. But one big thing that makes people feel more comfortable is they do not have firearms. They do not carry, there is a very specific unit of police that is
Mm-hmm.
authorized to have firearms, but a traffic officer who's going to be breathalyzing you does not have any way of using deadly force with a firearm.
Which is the way it should
And
be.
I
What
think
the
that,
hell?
yes, yeah. So people are more comfortable because there's no way that he's going to shoot me. Now he can tase me. Or, you know, I don't even, or pepper spray me. But they can't shoot me.
Yeah.
So that's like a big thing here. So there was a recent incident that happened. Now there is a dock that's wanting to be built that's threatening those penguins. And the penguins are Putiki. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced that. But there was an incident where a woman had something in her hair. I cannot for the life of me remember it, but it is sacred. It's a very spiritual item for the Maori people. And she was occupying that space like they're allowed to do in protest. And we had a police officer take the woman and kind of like slam her against the rocks. And it was disgusting. It was absolutely disgusting. As far as I know, that police officer, last I checked, was suspended without pay. I do not know if they were fired, but they were suspended without pay. Yes. And that is unfortunately more of a consequence than a lot of police officers get in America.
Yeah.
There is still racism. It is alive and well in every place. However, racism isn't given a public platform. And in fact, they are trying to, right now, there is I'll say bill, a bill that's trying to be passed that will make hate speech illegal and can actually make, have there be consequences for people who say really disgusting things.
That would be great.
Which is more than anything. Yeah. So we do still have problems like that here. However, it seems that they are trying a little bit harder than America.
They're at least aware of the situation and trying to fix it. I wanted to ask you about that, because it's like the moment where you're like, oh yeah, the police just like, they could pull you over if there's more than 2 people. It's like, oh God, so are people like, when you had your COVID situation, were there people dying from just police being like, there's 2 people in the car? Because that's where my brain goes. But obviously that was not the case.
No, that was not the case. I remember that we got pulled over because my mom was in need of medication. So we went to a pharmacy, and I remember that the police officer, the rules were like kind of iffy, and the police officer pulled us over and was like, hey, she was going to go to the pharmacy and I was going to go to the grocery store, and we got pulled over. And he was like, yeah, you can't do that. And we were like, no problem. We're going to go back home.
Yeah.
We're going to go back home. No problem. And we did. We turned around and went back home. And so, but there wasn't any fear. Like, he was a really nice guy. Like, he was chilling.
Just making sure that the spread of the virus isn't happening, basically.
Yes, but there were people who were fined hundreds of dollars because they traveled with more than 1 people without a good reason.
Like, meantime, in America, like, it was a suggestion, but nobody fucking did it. They're like, we suggest that just 1 person goes out because we heard New Zealand was doing that. And they're like, we're going to suggest it. And then, of course, you know, the classic America, where they're like, that's taking away my freedom. And it's like, we're just trying to help you. Like, Jesus Christ.
And it's funny because we have anti-maskers here, but it was so funny because it was so different, just because they would be like, I don't think I should have to wear a mask. Fuck masks, they don't do shit. But I gotta go to the grocery store, so I'm gonna put on a mask. Like, they would be like, I hate that I have to do this. This is against my rights, but I need to go to the grocery store, so I'm going to put on a mask. It was crazy. Like,
they still
they still
understood
did
the
it. They just
importance of it, but they just didn't agree.
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
Yeah. So that was kind of a response. We were in lockdown. It was rough. It was rough. It wasn't a walk through the park.
Yeah.
But everyone knew that this was for their whānau. This was for their family. This was for the people that they loved. And it was how we were going to get back to normal. And then we slowly decreased levels based on different things.
When you all still got paid during this time. We have not
had any COVID deaths. Yes.
Yeah, and you still got to live in your homes and not get evicted, and you didn't have to survive. You just had to be inside.
Yes. Yeah. And that was a big thing. After, businesses, local businesses were given money to try and keep open through the COVID times. And businesses, this is wild to me, businesses that didn't need it gave the money back. There were many companies that had leftover money, and so they gave it back.
What I can't even imagine a company in America even doing that. Like, they'd be like, oh, we don't need this money. Let me go buy a yacht. Like.
Yeah. Yes.
That is wild.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so our COVID response was very quick. We've had a couple of cases since then that are isolated basically in the general area, like where the person comes in from.
Yeah.
We haven't had any community cases. There have been cases where people from Australia with COVID have come over, but they just raised the local level. So there are it's either the whole country or just the local people in that general area that get raised a level. So that level was, raised accordingly and then dropped down accordingly, but the rest of us get to kind of exist at level 1.
Yeah.
And while things aren't totally the same, things are pretty much normal now.
That is
we can have concerts.
Amazing.
We can go out and see each other, that sort of thing. Yeah.
That's wonderful. I'll end everything because COVID for us, it's still very much alive and well. And now in Colorado, that is, we are going back out to shows, concerts and things are opening up. So we're there, but you've been there for a bit now. Because you said yours was only 7 months, right?
Yeah, so we were in lockdown for 6 weeks, and then we slowly went down. In total, I think that, because we've been back to normal for, I want to say, 6 months.
Wow.
So, yeah, so we've been totally back to normal for about 6 months.
That is insane. So I know with the US and us still struggling, traveling out to New Zealand is just not a thing that your country is going to let us do. I know there's a lot of no travel to US right now, specifically the US, and everywhere, literally everywhere. But whenever that does lift, and Americans that are listening right now are curious of ever visiting New Zealand and checking out and exploring that beautiful, wonderful country, what are things that people should know, as specifically, what are things Americans should know before visiting New Zealand and before experiencing your country? What are the etiquettes? What are the things that we should be aware of that we may not pick up on right away?
So a couple of things. Roundabouts. Roundabouts are a thing, not stoplights. So be aware of that. They are not as scary. I promise. You'll get the hang of it. We also drive on the wrong side of the road. So get used to staying on the left side of the road instead of the right. When you get petrol, which is gas, when you get petrol, they operate on an honor system. So you put the gas in your car and then you go in to pay for it.
What?
They do it. Yeah. So just and also and also when if you go to like get if you go in first, which they'll look at you funny, but you can do it still. If you go in first, make sure you know exactly how much money like needs to go in. So like my mom had a moment where she didn't use all the gas that she put in. So she was like, she said, put $80, and then she used 60 and went back in and said, "Hey, can I get my change?" And he was like, "Change? What are you talking about?"
Oh.
So make sure it was a big hassle. So don't do that. Learn from that. Don't do that. Anticipate that your food costs are going to be quite high. So, especially if you are going out to restaurants. If you're going out to a restaurant, it is going to be a higher price than you would normally expect. Entrees are going to range around $15 to $20.
Yeah.
So be aware of that. But also, instead of going out, get an Airbnb with a kitchen. They're super popular here. And go out to local markets, local marketplaces,
Yeah.
and buy your own produce. They have amazing fresh produce. The meat here is so wonderful if you're a meat eater. We also have a very wide selection of produce, so please enjoy it. And if you do want to enjoy a new fruit, might I suggest a feijoa, which are, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to just describe it, but they are fruits, and you scoop out the inside. So cut it in half, scoop out the inside, enjoy with a little sugar. Very good.
I love that. That sounds wonderful.
What else? Oh, yeah. People are very nice, so expect very nice, wonderful people. They are very, very lovely. As far as anything taboo, I can't really think of anything. Kiwis are wonderfully accepting most of the time. And yeah, they're great. Also, might I suggest checking out local places like within your area that are associated with Maori legends. Very cool. There are a lot of wonderful places where you get to read about the Maori legend that is associated with that place.
Yeah.
It's very, very interesting. And yeah, just have fun, relax, and also get used to people saying that they love your accent. They will tell you that you have an accent, and that's very fun.
Oh my gosh. Well, and that kind of, you said it a little bit, but I was going to follow up with, are there any places, locations, monuments, like what would be the places to visit when you visit New Zealand?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Nelson is the town that I live in, and we have two islands. We have the North Island and the South Island.
Mm-hmm.
Nelson City is on the very northern tip of the South Island. So, very top of the South Island. It's a small community. We have great beaches though. Kaitiri Tiri has a beautiful beach. They're nice golden beaches. They're gorgeous. The water's warm and very beautiful. And we also have a place called Cable Bay, which is more of a rocky beach, but the view is absolutely stunning. Split Apple Rock is something that you can visit also in Kaitiri Tiri, and there's a hidden beach that goes along with it. So you basically hike through the rainforest to get to a beach where you get to view Split Apple Rock, and the penguins have babies there, so you might get to see a couple of little baby penguins. Yes, Queenstown. If you're a surfer if you're a snowboarder or a skier, you are going to want to go to Queenstown. Queenstown is a college city. Gives me very much Breckenridge. If you're from Colorado, you'll know what I mean. So very ski town, college town. wonderful food, great accommodation, and they've got some really great snowboarding and skiing places. Um, and then lastly, I would probably suggest what's it called? Franz Josef. Franz Josef. It has a glacier. It's a small town. It's got a wildlife center, helicopter rides, um, rainforest accommodation where you're kind of in these little hut things in the rainforest. Very
Oh,
pretty.
beautiful.
Um, hot pools, spa, that sort of thing. Um, definitely recommend that. And also, one more tip that I'll leave you with is our seasons are flip flopped. So if
Oh,
you
yeah.
want to come in summertime here, you will have to leave the states in December, January, February. That's our summer.
Well, you are on like the exact opposite side of us.
Yes.
So that makes sense. That checks out. That must be so weird to get used to, though, for a while.
Yeah, so it's in the dead of winter right now, and I think we've got a little bit of rain outside. In Nelson, it doesn't snow. So in Queenstown, it'll snow. In the southernmost parts of the island, it will snow. But here we get no snow. It's just rain for the winter.
That's wild. It sounds beautiful, though. But thank you so much for everything. This was such a wonderful conversation. What we're going to do here is we'll have definitely 2 episodes, and then I'm thinking that third section of us just talking about New Zealand politics and things like that, I might make that an exclusive episode, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what I'm going to do. We're going to play around with this a little bit. But thank you so much for being here with me. Stay on the line, but I want to make sure that we say goodbye to everyone, and just thank you again. I love how you're able to communicate all of this stuff so well and so palatable and make it such an easy conversation, and it's been very lovely getting to know you, and thank you so much for being here and doing this with us.
You.
All right, so here's what we'll do.
Absolutely, anytime.
Yes. So what we'll do is we'll play the theme song, stay on the line with me, and we'll chat a little bit afterwards. But yeah, thank you so much. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, because it's morning for you. I'm like about to go to bed here soon.
Yeah.
But I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much again. I appreciate everything that you've said, and I adore you, and I hope we can actually meet in person one of these days.
One of these days, yes.
One of these days. All right, thank you everyone for tuning in, and we will see y'all next time.